让这颗的领土的让我审定的机遇。
Welcome everyone to our show tonight, and it's the show is called Phayul, and it's about Tibetans, and today's talk is mainly focused on this very important day of Tibetan history, which is March 10th. And on our show today, we have Mr. Dawa Dorjee, who's a senior at University of San Francisco, and he's also the president of Tibetan Youth Congress San Francisco, and he's the president of Students for Free Tibet. So that leads to our main focus of the talk show today. So we came on, our main purpose of coming on talk show today is to educate the general audience on the most important day, perhaps the most important day in Tibetan history, which is March 10th. And March 10th was the day in 1959 where the Tibetan had held the uprising in the capital city of Tibet, Lhasa, and many Tibetans were killed. And my parents, they were fortunate enough to escape Tibet, but the Ola who were held back, I presume. And maybe if you have any fresh memories, or if your parents ever shared any fresh memories of March 10th, Uprising Day, maybe you could share that, and then also talk about the significance of March 10th to Tibetan history.
Let me speak a few words about how March 10th became a very important day in Tibetan history. The Chinese soon after China became a communist People's Republic of China. They immediately started to launch a war of conquest in neighboring areas, especially Tibet, Xinjiang, and Mongolia. So the first attack came to Tibet in 1949, soon after Mao came to power. And between the period of 1949 till 1959, China was very vigorous and very much willing to sacrifice anything to control and bring Tibet under what they call as the motherland. And Tibetans were not open at all to receive that kind of force or that kind of occupation, and we fought and we resisted the Chinese advance into our land and Chinese effort to indirectly destroy Tibetan culture and way of life. So by 1959, Tibetans were almost on the brink of eruption, emotional eruption, on the brink of doing anything to defend the Tibetan way of life, beginning with His Holiness Dalai Lama's life. So in 1959, the event that triggered this huge revolt was that the Chinese military headquarters, which was stationed in Lhasa, invited the Dalai Lama to come to a banquet and a kind of a military show. I don't know what kind of show they were preparing about, but they invited the Dalai Lama to attend that banquet. And one thing they strictly asked for was that he should not bring any bodyguard inside the headquarters, into the headquarters. So that immediately shocked the Tibetan public in Lhasa. And also, by then, many Eastern Tibetans from Eastern Tibet had already arrived in large number in Lhasa because of huge wave of repression in Eastern Tibet.
Right, when the China came through Tibet and Eastern Tibet first, right?
When the Khampas, known for their warrior spirit, fought against the Chinese occupation, the Chinese were relentless in terms of suppressing the people. So tons and tons of Tibetans were flowing into Lhasa, and then on top of that, the Chinese invited the Dalai Lama for a banquet where he should not bring any bodyguard. So what the Tibetans
that sparked so much suspicion, I guess.
Exactly. So there's a lot of it was pretty clear that the Chinese were interested in either kidnapping him or assassinating him or doing something that would damage forever the personality of the Dalai Lama. So
And this is right before the uprising, March 1959.
I would say it's just few
I
days
think
before that.
Few days, okay.
Few days
all right.
before that, and then when Tibetan people gathered around his palace in Lhasa, people were really willing to do everything, to sacrifice their life to defend the Dalai Lama. So very people from all walks of life, kids, mother, father, like really old people, like grandparents, they started to pour in and around Dalai Lama's palace to defend the palace from Chinese attack or Chinese effort to bring the Dalai Lama out into the Chinese military headquarters. And so what His Holiness decided was to escape in the middle of a night to India.
He had to escape because of the dangers exposed around him. Right.
And also His Holiness was very afraid that unless he escaped, everything will be lost forever.
Right.
So he was very, I think he thought very clearly that if he could escape, the Tibetan people will eventually, disperse, and there won't be any serious bloodshed. But then soon after the word spread out that Dalai Lama fled or escaped, the Chinese started to bombard the whole area. The palace, including the palace. And in the ensuing days, around 86,000 Tibetans were killed.
Right, men, women, and children.
Men, women,
children.
Defenseless.
Right, monasteries.
Exactly,
like
and
monks,
by the guns
nuns,
of the so-called People's Liberation Army. And this day marked what we consider as the Tibetan National Uprising Day. On this day, Tibetans openly claimed that Tibet belongs to Tibetan.
Right.
Openly claimed that the Dalai Lama is the leader of the Tibetan people, and that they would do anything to defend his life and also his personage, and that the Tibetan people will not remain silent to the occupation.
Right.
So
is this like the first time the Tibetans spoke against the Chinese since Chinese started coming inside Tibet since 1949?
It is,
Probably,
in a sense, it is
the
the most powerful expression of resistance.
Okay.
Most powerful expression of resistance. Although resistance movements were going on in Eastern Tibet, in many areas of Kham and Amdo, Tibetans were fighting against the Chinese military. But this sort of a very unified voice of people from all walks of life, from every part of Tibet, was somewhat unprecedented.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow, that's quite a long history. So, what do you think? Every year we have March 10th, right? In U.S., in India, everybody preserves it. How is it helping the Tibetan cause? Even though we would preserve March 10th yearly, what are the improvements? What's progressing, and how is the condition inside Tibet right now? And how has it been helping the situation?
One most important thing about Tibetan movement as a whole is its direction and its tactic, and its Tibetan struggle is 100% non-violent movement, and Tibetans under the leadership of His Holiness the Dalai Lama had pledged that we would continue to fight for Tibetan freedom by non-violent means. So in the process, what we did, we have come up with this very strict plan that we would not resort violence by any means, but we would continue to draw international support. We will continue to educate people around the world. Although Tibet may not become free soon, we are sure that it will in the course of time, when the world wakes up for what Tibet truly is and was, and that what Tibetan people are truly after. So that's the most important part. So we continue to educate people